The Looney Tunes made their national broadcast debut in 1960 with The Bugs Bunny Show, which was based around the original shorts. Over the past few decades, there have been several attempts to reinvent and update the characters for new fans, including their latest endeavor, The Looney Tunes Show, a sitcom-style program that aired on Cartoon Network. What's up, Doc? This is Adrian with Channel Frederator, and today we're talking about the differences between The Bugs Bunny Show and The Looney Tunes Show. So, without further ado, on with the show. This is Then vs. Now, Looney Tunes. Reaching new audiences. For generations of cartoon lovers, enjoying the Looney Tunes gang meant watching The Bugs Bunny Show. This anthology series ran in various formats on multiple networks for 40 years. The program actually began on ABC in a 30-minute Tuesday primetime slot. Its premise was simple. Newly animated footage of Bugs and his friends headlining a theater variety show would be intercut between 3 theatrical cartoons from the Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies catalog. Each episode began with the now classic opening of Bugs and Daffy singing This Is It in vaudeville garb. The rest of the new animated segments would serve as intros and outros linking the shorts. Rather than rehashing old theatrical material, the Looney Tunes Show, which debuted in 2011, embraced a more contemporary vision. The whole gang's been transported to a modern Southern California neighborhood, and each 30-minute episode essentially has one story that fits squarely in the sitcom mold. Many of the hijinks revolve around the relationship between Bugs and Daffy, who now live together in a suburban house. While classic shorts are referenced, the synopsis of the Looney Tunes Show has more in common with The Odd Couple or Flintstones. However, most episodes are broken up by a pair of 2-minute vignettes, a Merry Melodies music video, and a Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote short. When the Looney Tunes Show debuted in 2011, it was the first Looney Tune-based series since The Lunatics Unleashed in 2005, which was an anime-inspired action comedy that went in a completely different direction. Warner Brothers Animation executive Sam Register admitted that the previous attempt at a revival was a failure. Producers felt a lot of pressure to make Looney Tunes relevant again to a new audience. The Looney Tunes Show was a conscious effort to reintroduce the comedic traits of the original gang. Same characters, different worlds. Due to copyright issues, The Bugs Bunny Show could only broadcast theatrical shorts from 1948 and after. Thankfully, this represented a period when Looney Tunes reached new heights in popularity. We're talking an era that included revered shorts like Nighty Night Bugs, What's Opera Doc, and Duck Amuck. While early classics had to be neglected, the series began in 1930 after all, producers were able to draw from a pool of releases with fully formed characters such as Elmer Fudd, Tweety, Sylvester, and Pepe Le Pew. In addition to these well-known stars, everyone from Witch Leza and Gossamer to the Goofy Gophers are featured on the Looney Tunes Show. However, in this series, they generally play ensemble roles in the suburban setting. Take Yosemite Sam, who's now Bugs' next-door neighbor. Instead of chasing the protagonist with a gun, he's more likely to annoy Bugs by coming over to sit in his massage chair while slathered in oil. Gross. In the original series, characters like Tweety and Sylvester would get an entire 7-minute short devoted to their characters. Unfortunately, they more or less just make extended cameos in the world of the Looney Tunes Show. Don't expect to see much of Marvin the Martian either. Taz shows up from time to time, but now he's a dog-like house pet that walks on 4 paws. While he's still a wild animal that blurts indecipherable words, he's not quite the tornado-spitting beast that originally walked on 2 legs. The most radical change may be the character of Foghorn Leghorn. Once a laid-back barnyard rooster with a penchant for mischief, he's now a super wealthy tycoon who hatches harebrained schemes. Thankfully, his trademark southern drawl is still intact. I say, I say, I say. The most prominent supporting role is Porky Pig, who plays the third-wheel friend to Bugs and Daffy. Porky still has the naive personality and affable stutter featured in the original series, however, his good nature is often taken advantage of by other characters. Speedy Gonzales, who now lives in Bugs' wall, also appears in most episodes of the Looney Tunes Show. Originally known for outrunning cats and saving other mice, Speedy's been reworked into a conscience character a la Jiminy Cricket. Most of his advice goes towards helping a clueless Daffy. Bugs and Daffy become the odd couple. From the first time they starred on screen together in 1951's Rabbit Fire, there's always been a rivalry between Bugs and Daffy. Usually the quick-witted Bugs gets the better of Daffy, who's portrayed as selfish and greedy. Even in the linking segments for the Bugs Bunny Show, Daffy often fails to outdo his counterpart. In the premiere episode, Daffy tries in vain to get Bugs to mention him with the other Looney Tunes stars. Of course, Bugs goes out of his way to introduce everyone except Daffy. In episode 7, Daffy dons a Bugs disguise so he can host the TV show. The plan's ruined when a sheepdog pounces on Daffy thinking he's caught a rabbit. Despite the competitiveness, there was also a tinge of friendship between the two characters. After all, Rabbit Fire ends with Bugs and Daffy teaming up to exact revenge when it finally becomes Elmer season. On the Looney Tunes Show, the friendship level is turned up a notch so that it's equal to the rivalry. Rather than outsmarting hunters in the woods, the two are living together, Oscar and Felix style. Daffy's apparently fallen on hard times, so Bugs is allowing his old pal to crash at his pad indefinitely. While he's still the wisecracking stinker we know and love, Bugs often plays the straight man to Daffy's buffoonery. This relationship dynamic is introduced right off the bat in the Looney Tunes Show's pilot, which features the roommates going on a game show in which best friends have to answer questions about each other. When self-centered Daffy fails to even know Bugs' favorite catchphrase, their friendship hits a snag. Daffy spends the rest of the episode going to exaggerated lengths to prove his ability to be a good friend. This involves going on a cruise ship with Bugs and paying for it with a rabbit's credit card. It's not quite like the old days when Daffy was trying to hide his treasure from Bugs and Alibaba Bunny, but the same character traits are there. Visual gags jokes traded for witty dialogue. By taking on the sitcom format, the Looney Tunes show features far more character development than the shorts on the Bugs Bunny show. This was the intention of creators Spike Brandt and Tony Cervone, who previously developed the Daffy and Porky spin-off Duck Dodgers. The creators took their cue from their favorite shorts directed by Chuck Jones, the legendary animator who introduced more dialogue and human emotion into the original series. By putting the characters in a more grounded suburban setting, Brandt and Cervone opened the stories up to more adult-oriented topics like employment, relationships, and family. For fans of the original series, it'll certainly be quite jarring to see the characters eating takeout, going to class reunions, and talking on cell phones while driving cars. The trade-off for this modern sensibility is that the Looney Tunes show has less visual gags. In the shorts featured in the Bugs Bunny show, there was an anarchic spirit and breakneck pacings in the humor. The Rabbit of Seville features a classic gag where Bugs and Elmer keep approaching each other with a succession of ever larger weapons. In a matter of seconds, the adversaries go from brandishing cannons to getting married to Bugs carrying Elmer over the threshold and dropping him several stories into a wedding cake. Don't expect to watch exaggerated cartoon violence like this on the Looney Tunes show. You're more likely to see the characters going to the DMV and struggling to pass their driving tests. The old school lunacy still comes out at times, but only in incremental doses. Instead, you get extended story arcs and plots involving love interests. Many of these stories involve relatively new characters to the Looney Tunes canon. Bugs' love interest is Lola Bunny, who was actually introduced in the 1996 movie Space Jam. In her feature film debut, she's depicted as a self-reliant woman who is as athletic as she is seductive. However, the Lola of the Looney Tunes show is a scatterbrained screwball character who obsesses over Bugs. Her talkative, indecisive behavior is a common source of comic relief on the show. Daffy's love interest, Tina Russo, has much more of a streetwise, no-nonsense personality. As a totally new character, she's one of the few who actually sees the good qualities in Daffy. In the episode You've Got Hate Mail, Daffy accidentally sends Tina an email where he describes her as the kindest, most beautiful, gorgeous, and intelligent woman in the world. That's right, there's actually sentimentality on the Looney Tunes show, and emails. Animation and character design. The producers of the Bugs Bunny show had access to cartoon shorts created by animators who were at the top of their game. In addition to Chuck Jones, there was Friz Freleng and Robert McKimson. The three animators combined had 2 Oscar wins and 9 more nominations during their time at Warner Brothers. Most critics agree that the cell animation used during the Looney Tunes golden age rivaled that of any other studio. For the Looney Tunes show, lead animator Jessica Barutsky spent nearly 2 years heading the character redesign process. While the designs are based on the styles used during the classic years, there are noticeable differences to the lines and movements. Barutsky said her goal was to make the gang look fresh for a new generation of kids. This meant streamlining the artwork using more angular shapes and changing up some of the proportions. Bugs' front teeth are now a bit more prominent and his coat is a little darker. He also has larger feet with less defined toes. When he makes a sarcastic comment, his eyelids tend to droop very low. Daffy has a larger, more angular beak that often protrudes upward. As a recurring double entendre, Daffy enjoys pointing out the size of his beak. He also has spikier feathers from his tail and the top of his head. Generally, the Looney Tunes show adds a contemporary touch to the designs used in the original series. The characters tend to have larger heads and feet than their counterparts from yesteryear. Additionally, the backgrounds feature more shading, textures, and reflections. For the standalone Roadrunner Coyote shorts, the developers use CGI animation that accentuates the speed and motion of the chases. Despite the completely different animation technique, this portion of the show bears the closest resemblance to its source material. The 2-minute shorts feature mostly silent characters as well as action-driven visual humor. Finding a new voice. The Looney Tunes show developer, Tony Cervone, said he wanted to take the voice acting to a higher, more complicated level on his show. This was quite a tall order considering that most of the voices in the original series were handled by the irreplaceable Mel Blanc. Known as the Man of a Thousand Voices, Blanc performed virtually every male Looney Tunes character from 1937 until his death in 1989. On the Looney Tunes show, Bugs and Daffy are performed by impressionist Jeff Bergman. While his renditions are slightly different, the voices more or less sound like a continuation of the original series. There should be no surprise that there's a seamless transition in this department. Some of Bergman's earliest voice acting work was actually for the Bugs Bunny show in 1986. In fact, Bergman's been credited as the first voice actor to replace Blanc. Where the Looney Tunes show really switches it up is in the supporting roles, which are handled by a roster of experienced voice performers and comedic actors. The most recognizable voice is that of Lola Bunny, who's performed by Kristen Wiig. The comedian goes all out in the fast-talking role, using her trademark irreverent humor to make Lola as chaotic as possible. Also joining the cast is fellow SNL alum Fred Armisen, who voices Speedy Gonzales. In the original series, Speedy speaks in a somewhat stereotyped Mexican accented ramble. Armisen owns it in a bit for the new version, giving the character more nuance. The late June Foray, who began adding her voice to cartoons in the 1940s, contributed to the Looney Tunes show as well. She reprised her role as Granny, the owner of Tweety and Sylvester. A changing fan base. With a history that dates back to 1930, Looney Tunes has cultivated quite a devoted fan base. The Bugs Bunny show kept the diehards happy because it essentially replayed the theatrical shorts as they were originally produced. The biggest changes made to the show were new openings and a few name tweaks. For some seasons, the series was called the Bugs Bunny Road Runner Show or the Bugs Bunny and Tweety Show. The program aired for 40 straight years before it was finally cancelled in 2000. As a completely new incarnation, the Looney Tunes show had a much tougher road to success. The creators wanted to appeal to younger kids, as well as adults who grew up with the original series. Ultimately, the reaction was mixed from fans and critics. Traditionalists decried the animation style and the changes to the storytelling. Although some liked the new direction, building a following from within the fan base was an uphill battle. However, Spike Brandt and Tony Cervone expected that from the very beginning, saying that they knew some fans wouldn't appreciate a fresh approach. Nevertheless, they resisted watering down their vision for the Looney Tunes show to appease the purists. Their program came out at a time when the Looney Tunes merchandise sales had been dropping for about 8 years. Executives felt like it was time for a change. Unfortunately, the change didn't last. After 2 seasons, the Looney Tunes show was cancelled in 2014. The series did lead to a 2015 direct-to-video spin-off movie called Looney Tunes Rabbit's Run, which featured Bugs as a New York cab driver. That same year, Warner Bros. Animation regrouped its Looney Tunes focus into a back-to-the-basics approach with a new series called Wabbit. This show seemed to be a conscious reaction to the situation-based formula of its predecessors, though it had mixed reviews. If you haven't seen it yet, Wabbit still airs its extended first season on Cartoon Network. Get hoppin', folks. Well, that's all, folks. Thanks for watching Then vs. Now Looney Tunes. Do you prefer the original shorts, or are you ready for another reimagining of Bugs and Daffy? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to click that bell icon to become part of the notification squad. We have new videos dropping every day, so make sure to subscribe. And remember, Frederator loves you.